The InMotion Adventure is officially announced. This is their response to the Begode Extreme, the Commander Mini, and the Patton. All the other players have exposed their hand in the game of EUC poker, and now InMotion has shown their hand. They think they've got the royal flush, but do they really? I see some really exciting things in this video that they announced, but I also see some really big question marks that they conveniently neglected to answer, and also some pretty deep disappointments. We're going to address the disappointments at the end and the exciting things at the beginning. You don't want to miss it. Let's get started. Welcome to Wheel Good Time, where we're going to be doing a total breakdown of the brand new, officially announced InMotion Adventure EUC. Let me just say that InMotion's marketing department is pretty much on the same level as Apple. If you've ever heard of the reality distortion field, that is what InMotion has pretty much emulated from Steve Jobs. Look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. But essentially, this wheel looks really cool, but there are some issues that I see that we're going to address at the very end of this video. So let's get started. The InMotion Adventure is branded as a 16-inch trail wheel that they're saying is pretty much going to be the best thing in the world. It has a 110 km/h free spin speed and an artificially limited 70 km/h speed limit. This artificially set speed limit may anger and frustrate some people, but it is InMotion's way of preventing any potential negative press for people that say want to go 80+ km/h and then subsequently cut out and then blame their equipment for their cutout. If you want to go 80 km/h and risk a cutout, then by all means, use a Patton, use a Commander Mini, use an Extreme. But in the case of InMotion, they are artificially setting their limit at 70 km/h just for safety and for their own brand reputation. So I don't blame them for it, and if you don't like it, you have other options available to you. Next, we have the Raptor controller. It's the exact same controller that is being used in the InMotion V14. The Raptor controller is rated for a 200 amp system, and as far as we know, the Adventure is 134 volts. So it's able to handle that, plus the fact that it has extremely thick wires means that it's able to handle very, very high currents. Speaking of which, the motor is a 4,000 watt motor, and they're saying that it has a peak capability of 9,000 watts. And then later in their launch event, they say that it can very briefly go up to 12,000. Next, we have the battery type. We have 4 600 watt-hour battery packs for a total of 2,400 watt-hours. These are going to be completely waterproof, and they're quick swappable. They're not something that it's going to be hot swappable necessarily. They're saying that it can take about 10 minutes to swap them out. Or if you're me, probably closer to 30 minutes. I would say if you're going to go for that 10-minute benchmark, then it would be wise to use a drill when swapping out these batteries. More about these batteries is that they're using the brand new Samsung 50GB batteries. There's not a whole lot of information about them online, but from what I'm gathered, they are 18650 type batteries, which is pretty much par for the course for InMotion. But then on top of that, we're looking at roughly the same amount of discharge current that the 50E batteries are capable of. Now, to be fair, the 50E batteries are 21700 battery type compared to InMotion's preferred 18650 battery types. Either way, they're all lithium-ion batteries, and so it really doesn't make a big difference, but these are the equivalent of roughly a 50E battery. I already touched on the batteries being waterproof, but on top of that, the entire wheel is going to be waterproof. They've even got a video of their employees hosing the thing down with a high-pressure hose. This is a really big deal. Should you ride it in the rain or throw it in a lake? I would say absolutely not. However, if you're caught in a rainstorm or just want to commute in it, it looks like it's going to be perfectly suited for that. InMotion also talked about their spiked pedals. This looks to be the exact same pedal type that the V13 has. The V13 pedals are good. They're not great. They are a little bit on the rounded side, and so while it's better than the skateboard grip tape variety that they had on, say, the V11, this is a little bit better, but nowhere in comparison to the begode style pedals where they're actually spiked. The sharper the pedals, the better grip it gives you. Begode pedals lock your feet down like Gorilla Glue. V13 pedals and presumably V14 Adventure pedals are good, but your foot does have a little bit of potential to slip around if they are going to be the exact same type. Now let's talk about the pads. The Adventure has pads that are extremely suspiciously similar to the Patton and the Sherman S's pads. These pads are really nice, they're outstanding, and in general, far and away superior to any of the offerings from Extreme Bull or Begode out of the box. You may never have to get replacement pads and just use the ones that they include with it. InMotion also talked about the adjustable headlight. It looks almost identical in every way to the V13 headlight, except it is recessed, and so it's going to be very well protected in the event of a crash. But on top of that, the fact that you can adjust the angle is a really awesome feature that has been needed for a really long time on EUCs. I do have some concerns over this though. This is a trail wheel, and so therefore it is very possible that the headlight may just rattle and shake out of the position that you want it to be in and eventually just sit sagging down. So just keep that in mind. It may or may not happen, but I just observed that and I think that it's a little bit worrisome, but maybe my worries are unfounded. I don't know. Now let's talk about charging speed. InMotion claims that 5 minutes of charging will get you 10 kilometers of riding time with 2 chargers that are both pumping out 8 amps apiece. That's really impressive, and they said it's not just marketing false claims, but they said it's actually doable. 16 amps of charging speed is pretty cool, but you're gonna have to buy that separate charger yourself. It's gonna cost you likely an arm and a leg, and of course, you're gonna have to carry 2 chargers with you. So it's a cool thing, but it is not included, and it's gonna be tacked on to your final price if you want a second charger. Let's talk about some of the negatives that I observed about this wheel. InMotion spent a lot of time hyping up the suspension on this wheel. It's a coil progressive shock, and it looks very nice, but when you look at it a little bit more closely, it's only 85 millimeters. When you're marketing this as a trail wheel, it should be at least a little bit competitive to the other offerings out there, such as the Extreme, the Patton, the Commander Mini, where they have each about 130 millimeters of suspension travel. This is a trail wheel, or so they claim, and so therefore this wheel should have a lot more suspension travel than it does. That's a big disappointment, and I feel a bit let down about it. Let's talk about the price tag on this wheel. You will pay dearly for this product. The very early bird pricing is $3,300 US. Now, if we look back at the InMotion V13 announcement, the early bird pricing was $4,000 US, and the final price went up to $4,600 for batch 2 and onward. With the V14 Adventure, based on that previous information, I'm gonna guess, and this is no insider information whatsoever, but I'm just guessing it's gonna be a $600 increase. So I'm guessing $3,900 for that. Now, if you look at this price tag compared to its competitors, it's priced fairly similarly to the Patton, but it's more expensive than the Commander Mini and the Extreme. It does seem like it one-ups the competition in a lot of different ways, but that's only the early bird pricing. Once the price goes up, it's in a whole different ballgame. I think that this wheel is probably worth the $3,300 that they're asking, but personally, I wouldn't pay a penny more. As far as value is concerned, the true value in this wheel comes from the swappable battery packs. In theory, you should be able to buy a future InMotion wheel that you can remove the battery packs from the Adventure and put it into a future wheel. The value in this wheel comes from the ability to swap your battery packs fairly easily. It's not as hot swappable as I hoped, but it's pretty nice that you're going to be able to take your EUC on a plane and then ship your battery pack separately, say to the Amped Electric Games, for example. A huge letdown about this wheel is the fact that they originally said unofficially that they would be releasing a 14-inch version and a 20-inch version of the Adventure. In this announcement, we only have one version, and it's a 16-inch one. Also, on their spec sheet, they claimed a max range of 120 kilometers. Let's be clear, You will never, ever, ever be able to get that kind of range on a 2400 watt hour, 134 volt, or even 126 volt wheel. It's just not really gonna happen. But maybe if you throw on a toddler on there and push them down a hill, then they might be able to reach that range at the very bottom. But bottom line, you're not gonna go 120 kilometers, period, end of story. Speaking of 134 volt or 126 volts, they never announced it on their launch event. Who knows what exactly the voltage is going to be on this wheel? I'm hoping 134 volts, but that's a big question mark, and it's an 8 volt difference. That's a big deal, and the public deserves to know. Also disappointing is the amount of plastic on this wheel. It looks in some ways a little bit cheaply made, and considering it has a very high price tag, I think that it should look a little bit less cheap than it does. The Adventure does have a lot of metal, but it seems like that metal is located pretty much in the batteries and the motor, considering it's about the same weight as its competitors. Also, I feel like the wheel is just a little bit on the ugly side in my opinion. Clearly, the designers of this wheel valued function over fashion. And enter night mode. Unfortunately, I finished my recording of this video, and then halfway through, my microphone battery died, so now I'm recording it again. Let's pick up where we left off at function over fashion. Basically, on the front, they have an area where you can rest the wheel, and it's got little nubs, kind of similar to the way the Extreme is, but it's gonna get kind of messed up after resting there and getting scuffed, and it's just gonna look ugly pretty soon. So I'm not a big fan of that, and if InMotion does eventually put on a kickstand, they're going to charge you money for it. They're also going to be charging you for a seat if you want to get one later on. Other wheels you can possibly ride seated on, but with the Adventure, not so much. There's a big hole right in the rear handle where basically if you sit down, you're probably going to be putting your butt on the rear handle itself. And for those betesticled folks such as myself, that's a really dangerous place to be putting your junk. All I'm saying is the EUC world is 98% male, give or take, and that's a pretty risky prospect for people such as myself. So if you plan on riding seated on the Adventure, it might be wise to pay up more money to InMotion so you can ride the Adventure seated. In conclusion, this looks like the ultimate Gucci beginner wheel. It also looks like it's going to be a really good trail wheel if you can get over the fact that it only has 85 millimeters of suspension travel. The competitors for it have about 130 millimeters of suspension travel, and frankly, that's far superior, and it's a very, very critical thing. It's a big oversight on InMotion's part to only do 85 millimeters of suspension travel, and then on top of that, they're going to be charging a significant premium for this particular very high-end premium product. You're paying a premium, and then they're not really delivering on the suspension end. If you plan to buy this wheel, it would be very wise to get your pre-order in right now, because the price will go up and likely by a lot. If you do end up buying this wheel, please consider using one of the affiliate links in the description, because then it also supports the channel and it doesn't cost anything to you. If you like this breakdown, please consider booping that like and subscribe button. If you hated this breakdown, please tell me why you think I'm an idiot in the comments. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.